country.
At a time when most people still have several hours to sleep before starting their working day, the alarm clock had darkened the 4 a.m. beginning of the workday for 40-year-old Merle Gustafson of Tallulah, Louisiana. Merle's days are long and hard, and they're spent in the outdoors of the Delta farmlands. By the time the sun is breaking the horizon, old Merle is already at his small grass airstrip on the edge of town. At dawn, he must be ready to start work. Merle is what is called an agronaut, better known as an ag pilot or a crop duster. The tools of the trade for this country boy are his flying machines and chemical sprays and fertilizers. His office is the cockpit of ancient-looking biplanes. His computer and his secretary are his own mind and sharp eyes that constantly remain alert and aware of the many dangers lurking in the farm fields. The wires and the poles, the hard-to-get-to places that are even harder to get out of with a loaded airplane on a hot day. For nearly 15 years, the routine has remained the same, from early spring until late fall. Up and out at dawn, flying the fields for miles around, spraying bug and worm control for the cotton and bean crops. 1,000 hours of up and down, in and out, around and around the turns and back into the fields again, and again, and again. Skimming low over the ground, guided only by memorized landmarks, invisible to the untrained eye, and with the aid of flagmen where they can be used. This is the world's third deadliest profession, and one of the agricultural world's most important. It takes a special breed of man to gamble with his life like this every day. If the chemicals don't work on the pilot, the wires are waiting with grabbing danger for you. If not the wires, the heavy loads carried on the hot, airless days. The grueling heat of straining engines in the dust of midsummer. And yet he goes on, like many others who do the same kind of work. Merle and his mechanics and pilots usually try to take a break when the morning's work is done. The small town cafe is part of the ritual of the country. This place is no exception. For to meet here and talk about the latest weather and farming problems is a natural habit and a distinct need for these men.
Had 2 days of sunshine and now we got 4 days of rain coming.
Do you know it's time to plant everything we're going to plant in 4 days? Now ain't nobody got no land already.
Plant in June again. Well, yeah, and planted the stalk cotton and nutmeg. Nobody planted, I don't get it.
It all started not too very long ago in the 1920s following World War I. And it started right here in Tallulah, Louisiana. Cotton was king then. It was really king. This was a time before soybeans became a popular crop in the South. In the 20s, it was becoming increasingly difficult to control a new threat to the cotton crop. Boll weevils and worms, bugs that damaged the young plants. Plants that, once damaged, would never make the beautiful white puffs of a good cotton crop. The weevils and the worms attack the flowers and the square of the cotton plant, the young bolls. Once the weevils drill their hole or the worms sting a square or boll, the potential source of cotton either is stunted or falls off the plant. For the millions of acres of cotton fields in the South, there was little the farmer could do in the way of effective control in the early days. About all he could do was send his farm hands out with small hand-operated or mechanically operated horse-pulled devices that dusted the crops. It was a slow and tedious process. Right after World War I, somebody in the government got a brilliant idea. With all the surplus planes left over from the war, and with Army pilots anxious for something to do, why not try to develop a way to apply the dust using airplanes? The United States government set up a frontier research station at Tallulah to work on just that. And agricultural aviation was born. Many of the planes have not changed so much in looks, but in load-carrying methods and in the chemistry used, the changes have been great. The technology of changing from dust to spray and the methods of dispersion and control have become a science. There are many different kinds of newer agricultural planes. Some have two wings. The old biplanes had two, and they remain in the biplane classification. Others have only one low wing, but the sound of their engines, no matter what they look like, is like bees swarming over the vast croplands during the growing season, and it's music to the ears of the pilots and farmers. The main objective of the ag plane is to carry a heavy load of liquid or dry chemical. The fewer trips back to the airport to take on the chemistry, the more economic the operation, and the lesser the strain on pilot and machine. One of the largest ag planes is the Big Snow, powered by a 1,000 horsepower engine. One of the smallest but most reliable is the little fabric-covered Pawnee. The planes are as diversified as their aggressive outdoorsman pilots. Many times during the season, the field to be worked is too far from the airport to return each time to reload. So the pilot either lands on the auxiliary strip or on a nearby road. His loading truck will meet him in the field and fill him up again, and he'll be on his way without ever having to leave the area of his work for the day. The work is hard and hot and dusty. It is constant and wearing. And like here on this narrow farm road, it's not always easy. Ag flying is a combination of the good old days of aviation, with grass strips and hardy little planes and pilots, combined with the technology of modern-day agriculture.
Out having a big good time, riding on his flying machines and thinking everything's just fine. He works all day and plays all night. He rides his way o'er the land. His aeroplanes go every way but straight. He's a hell of a flying man. For Merle is just a country boy. That's all he'll ever be. He don't need
country boy does most all the major engine work on his planes, maintenance is another one of the everyday chores around the small airport. But it's constant care and attention to these engines that assures the pilot of the power he needs to get out the loads, especially when that need is great. At this time of the year, Merle's concentration is on his farm. He raises soybeans on about 800 acres of the richest black delta dirt around. He enjoys his farming, but like all who seek their living from the soil, there are worries that go with the job. The weather is the biggest worry this year, the weather and the rain.
Scattered thunder showers through Friday. Probabilities will range from 20% north to 50% south today, and about the same tonight and on Friday. Amounts will be spotty with scattered quarter to half-inch amounts in the north and central portions, and scattered...
Even with the work at hand, while plowing, Merle finds time to think, if nothing else, about his coming air shows. Through the spring and summer, he's booked solid throughout the southern states. Like many of the farmers in this part of the country, Merle does the greatest part of his own work. He and his friends band together and rotate the plowing and planting on each other's places until the job is done. Merle is a worker who believes in getting the job done today. Merle Gustafson's spare time is often occupied as Director of Flight Operations for the Louisiana-based Cajun wing of the Confederate Air Force, a group of dedicated men who strive to preserve flying examples of the planes used in World War II. Merle's big Navy Corsair fighter is one such famous plane. It actually flew in the Battle of Okinawa, where it was named the Angel of Okinawa. The plane, under the skillful hands of its pilot, shot down more kamikaze planes than any other in that battle. Today, the Angel, under the skillful hands of Merle Gustafson, performs aerial maneuvers for the pleasure of an airshow crowd, far from the battlefields 30 years ago. Flaps down, the big Corsair hangs on its prop in a simulated aircraft carrier landing approach. Low, slow, and dirty is what they call it. The huge 13-foot propeller churns the air in front of the idling 2,000 horsepower monster of an engine. The Angel taxis to the ramp of the small airport and folds its wings just as it did many times many years ago aboard the aircraft carrier that was its home. Folding the wings allowed the plane to take up less space, where space was a commodity at sea during the war. The crowds around the South really enjoy the shows put on by Merle in the Corsair. But most of all, they look forward to an exhibition of another of the country boys' planes, the North American AT-6. The North American AT-6 is Merle's best airshow crowd pleaser. It's slower than the Corsair, but being slower, it flies lower. which is what the crowds really want to see. This was the plane that Merle flew when he taught himself how to do aerobatic maneuvers that he performs in his air shows. Used to train advanced fighter pilots during World War II. Diving at the ground to build up speed, Merle finds it easy to imagine what a machine gun strafing run must have been like. Merle is right now in his most familiar element, the cockpit in the sky. A well-known quote from literature says, "A man is part of all that he has been." It must be true, for the world of Merle Gustafson has touched many another man's life, even though not always in person. Here at this small and dusty southern airport, where a new frontier was opened for the world, where Delta Airlines was born, Merle became a part of it all that had gone before him. The early experimenters and the fighter pilots that flew their planes and gave their lives for America's heartland and freedom. He is one of their kind, and he remembers their contributions and their spirit with his efforts in the sky. To be the best possible pilot the Lord made it possible for him to be is Merle's own analysis of his motivation. Just that, nothing more. The man is part of his country and all that it has been, whether in the cockpit of a fighter plane or a duster or the business end of his old DC-3 charter plane. He is part of all of those who have ever loved to fly. Merle Gustafson, pilot, farmer, dreamer, Merle Gustafson, the country boy. The country.
Merle is just a country boy out having a big good time, riding on his flying machines and thinking everything's just fine. He works all day and plays all night. He rides his way o'er the land. His aeroplanes go every way but straight. He's a hell of a flying man. For Merle is just a country boy, that's all.